There's wacky security guards. Terrible camera work. Man-crazy daughters. Absent-minded professors. And a monster hungry for color forms? It's Reptilicus! But is it watchable? Thank you, audience sound effect, and welcome everybody. Is it watchable? I'm your host, Paul. If you like giant monsters, you're in luck, because this is Giant Monster Week. Oversized movie monsters are still big business at the box office, but normally when we think of rampaging radioactive reptiles or pissed off prehistoric primates, we think of the classics, and for good reason. Hollywood has loved stop-motion beasties and rubber-suited stuntmen from almost the beginning. But giant monster fever wasn't just an American thing. After Japan entered the game with 1954's Godzilla, it seemed everybody wanted a piece of the action. Our friends in the UK? Japan? The Soviets? Japan? The Czechs? Japan? Suddenly, A-list movie stars found themselves competing with no-name actors and ridiculous costumes for those teenage dollars. Not to be left out, in 1961, Denmark decided the world was ready for its Danish death dragon, Reptilicus. Our hero is a copper miner named Sven, whose team digs up what looks like raw chicken instead of copper. The chunks of flesh are flown to Copenhagen, which they make abundantly clear, to be studied at the university. At the university, we meet Dr. Martens and the first of his two promiscuous daughters, Lisa.
Don't spend all your time with those old fossils, Father. You might become one.
With two daughters like you and Karen, it's a pleasure to retire to my old bones.
At this point, you should know that the daughters play a pretty significant role in this movie for reasons, I guess. Anyway, at the lab, daughter number 2, Karen, enters with a telegram. Our friend Sven, the copper miner, is flying in with more reptile samples from the dig.
Karen, pick him up at the airport.
Well, how will I know him?
Since when must I tell you how to find a man?
Not sure what that was, but the plot thickens because
I have never seen bone fragments like this before.
the tissue from the dig grows into a big reptile tail, which they keep in a giant walk-in freezer. They explain to Sven that they believe it was once from a giant dinosaur. Soon, Karen is hanging all over Sven when her sister walks in and proceeds to brutally block Karen's advances.
Please don't frighten that young man. You know she is really quite dangerous. But don't worry. I'll go along as your chaperone.
Otto, I envy that young man.
Yes, he will be busy now.
Oh, yes.
It's like the father's this cheerleader for their promiscuity. Maybe he just wants them out of the house, I don't know. One night, Dr. Dalby decides to work late at the lab. He collects a sample from the tail and proceeds to do the hungry chicken at his desk until he falls asleep, leaving the freezer door unlatched. The next morning, Dr. Martens and Lisa, for some reason, think he's dead, and then they wish he was because they find the tail is thawed. But strangely, they find it's actually healing.
It is a lie.
So they do what anyone would do. They call an American
We are not accustomed to see such a beautiful woman connected with science.
and proceed to sexually harass her.
Brigadier General Mark Grayson.
To play it safe, they double up and get themselves another American.
I'm pleased to meet you, General. I hope you will enjoy your stay.
Thank you, Miss Martins. But I believe the shorter the stay, the happier for me.
This guy's a real jerk.
No offense meant.
So far, so bad, right? But here's where things take a weird left turn. First, we get a couple scenes with the comedy relief guy, Peterson, that was introduced earlier. He's like a security guard or something who's brought in to keep an eye on the lab. Now, the actor playing Peterson was a comedian that was a pretty big deal in Denmark at the time, and these scenes sort of feel like they were shoehorned in to capitalize on that. But it gets stranger because a couple short scenes later, General Grayson gets some advice on how to stop being such a buzzkill.
Anything I can do for you? Yeah. Get me transferred out of this damn place.
I think, General, if you just visit the city, you might learn to like it.
I took Captain Brandt's suggestion. He was right. I needed a change of pace. And I persuaded Connie to go along. It was a bright move. She was a charming companion.
Look, Mark, the Little Mermaid. How lovely. It is a beautiful city.
Yes, it is. There's the King's Castle, Emelubor. royal guard.
What a beautiful fountain.
That's the goddess Geithian, plowing Denmark out of the Scandinavian peninsula, according to legend.
Look at that traffic. So many bicycles.
They say the Danes are born on bicycles.
I know. And then thrown into the water to learn to swim.
Now that is a straight up tourism commercial in the middle of a major motion picture. What? And as long and painful as that was, I cut it off early. It's about twice as long. Back at the lab, a late night thunderstorm causes Reptilicus to become fully regenerated, or maybe the storm is just a dramatic coincidence. It's unclear. Of course, Dalby's working late again, and the lab loses power, and Reptilicus escapes. To track the monster, the military sets up shop at an out-of-focus location. It's a task force comprised of all the top brass from all the different branches of the military, and Sven the copper miner for some reason. Reptilicus is spotted, and the military is mobilized, along with Sven the copper miner. Now we gotta stop for a moment and talk about Sven's involvement in this operation. He's just a copper miner who found the flesh. I mean, if you stumbled across a dead body and reported to the police, yeah, they'd ask you some questions, but they're not gonna invite you to help them solve the case. Here we get our first full shot of Reptilicus, and well, you know, look at him. The military opens fire, and Reptilicus fights back, and then he leaves.
We didn't even dent him.
Where'd he go? To get a snack. Apparently he had a craving for some bad special effects. They catch up with Reptilicus at the beach, and also Lisa's there. Reptilicus retreats into the ocean, so they call in the Navy. They spot him on the ocean floor and decide to bomb him. Not a good idea, as Dr. Miller points out.
If Reptilicus should be hit, you'll never find all the pieces underwater. He can regenerate, Mark.
Meanwhile, Dr. Martins has a seemingly random heart attack. Back at Military HQ, Karen is there for some reason and attempts to console/put the moves on Sven, who is also there for some reason. Reptilicus heals up from all the bombing and kills a bunch of people at the beach with some Nickelodeon slime. Now why aren't the beaches closed? They know he's still out in the ocean. He heads for Copenhagen and starts smashing stuff and green sliming everything. The military manages to push him out of the city, but it's just a Reptilicus fake out because he comes right back. Classic Reptilicus. Then finally, the big idea.
Too bad we can't give him a hypo. Knock him out.
Drug him?
Just wishful thinking, Mark.
No, wait a minute.
The plan is to fill a bazooka missile's warhead with a drug and then shoot it into Reptilicus' mouth. But as one genius expertly points out,
You'll have to fire point blank at very close range.
I know.
they set up for the kill, but Reptilicus, being all sly, decides to turn around. So it's up to a brave soldier to sacrifice himself to save the city, and Reptilicus squishes him with his neck, I think. It's tough to see. The shot is nothing but net, and the mighty Reptilicus is defeated.
It's a good thing that there's no more like him.
Truer words have never been spoken. Like so many other low-rent sci-fi and B movies, Reptilicus was brought to us by our good friends at American International Pictures. American producer and director Sidney Pink, famous for his 3D productions of the time, created the story and shared directing duties with his Danish counterpart, Paul Bang. The Danish and English versions of this film are actually two separate productions, one shot in Danish by the Danish-speaking cast and the other shot in English by the Danish-speaking cast. Now if you're thinking their English was pretty good, it's because they actually had to dub English over their English because their English was not so good. Also not so good from what I understand is a novelization of Reptilicus. You can actually find it on Amazon if you're curious. I guess it gets a little softcore, if you know what I mean, which I guess could explain the whole thing with the daughters. So Reptilicus, is it watchable? Reptilicus is definitely so bad it's good. I love this movie. I can't recommend it enough. From laugh out loud bad special effects and puppet work, to the quotable dialogue and cringy acting.
You're a stubborn guy.
It's exactly what you want from a good bad movie. It's funny while trying to be serious. It's funny while trying to be exciting. It's funny while trying to be scary, but cringy while trying to be funny. Well, that's it for this episode. Be sure to join me next time when I review 1998's Godzilla with Ferris Bueller's own Matthew Broderick. And don't forget to subscribe.